Who would choose the wrong table and find the right people? James Denton had everything a headline could love and nothing a quiet evening could hold. At 39, the Seattle CEO had learned how to disappear in plain sight. Thrift store jeans, a borrowed Subaru, two boys in the back seat arguing over a juice box. He wanted to know if anyone could love him without the blue-chip surname, without the chauffeur, without the careful performance. So one rainy night, he walked into a small French bistro on Capitol Hill, La Lumière, with his sons and no entourage, and waited. Joy Lauren, 31, arrived looking for someone else. She was supposed to meet a man from an app named Alex, not a tired father with two restless boys and a smile that looked like it hadn't been taken out in months. She sat at the wrong table, said hi, and James didn't correct her. What started as a mix-up turned into the first unguarded conversation he'd had in years. Joy didn't know who he was. She only saw a man doing his best, and two kids who needed more than a nanny. But secrets in this city have a way of fogging the glass and writing themselves backward for everyone to read. And when the truth came out, not just about who James was, but about why he hadn't spoken up at that table, one mistake might cost them the only thing that ever felt right. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. Rain threaded down Pine Street like silver stitches when James parallel parked the borrowed Subaru outside La Lumière. The pine-scented air freshener swung from the mirror as Charlie and Mark fenced with straws over a dented juice box. Sharing is not the same as surrender, Charlie announced, already practicing adulthood. Dad said I get first sip, Mark countered, already practicing chaos. James keyed off the engine and rested his wrist on the steering wheel. 39 wasn't old by any metric, but grief had gifted him a few extra winters along the hairline and at the edges of his eyes. He took a breath, tasted rain and gum and the fainted memory of courage, and turned around. Okay, treaty time, he said. 2 sips each. If either of you declares war, I'm eating all the frites myself. Unconstitutional, Charlie muttered, but he passed the box. Mark slurped dramatically and grinned. Inside La Lumière, glass fixtures glowed the color of butter. A chalkboard listed specials in looping French. Soup à l'oignon, steak frites, tarte au citron. No host stand theatrics. Just a woman in a navy apron whose smile reached the tired parts of people. Table for 3? She asked. 4, James said before he could stop himself. The number swelled in his throat and broke. I mean 3. He never got used to correcting that. They were seated near the window, a small round table with a candle the size of a tea light and cutlery that clinked like polite bells. James kept his baseball cap on, partly for the rain, mostly for nerves. No chauffeur, no tailored suit, no Denton Global Group in this room, only a father trying to be enough. Hannah had texted earlier. His assistant, blunt and bright and far warmer than she pretended to be. If you get cold feet, I'll call you with a fake crisis, she'd offered. He typed back, no crises. If I can't do dinner like a normal human, I need more than PR. Then, because the world is ridiculous, he had asked her to confirm the reservation under a common first name. Not James, not Denton, just Jamie. Felt childish and safe. The door opened again. Damp air rolled in. She stepped in, shaking raindrops from a black umbrella like small stars. Medium height, black hair spilling loose, a cardigan the color of moss. Joy Lauren scanned the room with the half-expectant, half-nervous look of someone who had memorized a stranger's profile picture and hoped reality would be kind. Her eyes landed on James's table, On him, on the boys, on the candlelight that made the room gentler than it had any right to be. Hi, she said, hesitant, hopeful. James glanced toward the entrance, where another server was clearing menus from an empty two-top, also held under Jamie. A coincidence with a countdown. Hi, he said carefully. I'm Joy, she added, relief softening her mouth. You must be Alex? 1,000 learned instincts rose in James, the ones that had protected him in boardrooms and interviews, and at the funeral where he shook hands with men who couldn't meet his eyes. Correct the mistake. Offer a polite exit. Don't make a story. Instead, he looked at Charlie, who was reading the French words like puzzles, and Mark, who had discovered the candle's tiny flame and was blowing at it with the solemn dedication of a meteorologist. He swallowed. I'm Jamie. We can move to the bar if you want. Your reservation might be. Joy glanced at the empty two-top and back at the boys. Her shoulders dropped a fraction. Honestly, she whispered, I'm fine right here. She folded her umbrella, slid into the empty chair, and smiled as if this wasn't strange at all. So, what do we think about soup à l'oignon? I hear it cures rain. Does it cure brothers? Mark asked. Unclear, she said. But frites help almost everything. They ordered in the gentle chaos of hopeful strangers. Onion soup for Joy, steak frites medium for James, poulet roti split between the boys, extra bread because Mark saw the basket and fell in love. The server set down a carafe of water and, because it was La Lumière, a small dish of cornicons that looked like green commas. Conversation tiptoed at first. Joy worked at the Greenwood Community Center Library. Children's programs, story hours, paper crowns, the quiet alchemy of making shy kids brave with books. She lived a few blocks away with her friend Bella, who made a sport of offering advice no one asked for and being right anyway. Joy didn't mention the rent or the way she counted grocery receipts twice. She didn't perform good deeds. She just spoke and the room thawed. What about you? She asked at last. James felt the familiar fork in the road. Denton Global Group belonged to another universe. The interviews, the moderated panels in South Lake Union, the institutional investors who used the word allocate like a prayer. Here, under this light, with onion steam making clouds above their bowls, he wanted to tell smaller truths. I design things, he said. Teams. Systems. He watched her face for the flinch. Men who designed things had disappointed her before, he guessed. It's consulting. Strategy. All true, none of it theatrical. Joy nodded as if he'd said he mended fences. Charlie, who liked facts you could stack, added, Dad fixes stuff when it breaks, like the dryer, and sometimes people. Deep cut, buddy, James murmured. Is it true? Joy asked, amused. Depends on the day, he said. The bread arrived warm enough to hold with your hands. Joy tore a piece, buttered it as if buttering were an art. Mark stole a corner and returned with a crumb trail apology. Charlie explained how steam worked. Joy listened like a person who remembered what wonder felt like. The spill came later because fate is a slapstick writer. Mark reached for the carafe, caught only the slickness of condensation, and water sloshed across the table toward Joy's lap. James moved fast. Joy moved faster. She jerked back with a surprised laugh, napkin midair like a white flag. I'm so sorry, James said, already blotting the table, the angles of the disaster. It's water, Joy said, still laughing. If it were creme brulee, then we'd have a tragedy. Define tragedy, Charlie said gravely. Caramelized sugar is serious. The server materialized with towels and kindness. The candle drowned and then, somehow, kept burning. James felt something loosen inside him, tension he'd carried like a second spine. Joy didn't lean away from the mess. She leaned toward it, quick and unflustered, the way you lean toward a crying child or a question you've been scared to ask yourself. Halfway through the steak, Joy glanced at her phone just long enough to swipe a notification away and winced. Ugh, sorry. My friend micromanages my safety. If I don't text at the hour mark, she calls the mayor. Bella, James guessed. Bella, Joy confirmed. She says if a man doesn't pass the bread test, the part where he shares without being weird, he fails the night. How am I doing? James asked, passing the basket. She'll make you take a second test, Joy said. Something about umbrellas. Umbrellas are public utilities, he said. I pass. Joy smiled. It reached the tired parts of him. Outside, the rain slowed to a silk hiss. Neon from a bar across the street wrote small mysteries on the wet pavement. La Lumière hummed around them. Dates, anniversaries, lonely people making eye contact with menus because it felt safer than looking at themselves. James hadn't planned to keep the mistake. He had walked in with an ethics he thought he could live by. Tell the truth early, risk the exit. But then Joy had said I'm fine right here, and every muscle trained for disclosure had gone quiet. He watched Mark lick salt from his fingers and Charlie catalog which desserts were mathematically optimal, and the confession lodged between heartbeats. It wasn't only cowardice. It was hunger. For 20 months he had tried to teach his boys that love could be gentle after it had been cruel, that home could be fashioned from ordinary nights. He wanted one of those nights. He wanted it with someone who spoke softly to steam and believed frites could fix almost everything. Jamie, Joy said, and he flinched at the name he'd borrowed. I'm glad I sat here. Me too, he said, and meant it so much he could barely swallow. At the next table, a couple took a picture of their crème brûlée and kissed. The bistro light turned the sugar into stained glass. For a breath, James saw how this could live. Not forever. Forever was a word he no longer trusted. But for the length of a meal and the walk to the car and maybe the promise to see each other again somewhere that smelled like books and tempera paint and community. Do you ever bring them to the library? Joy asked, nodding toward the boys. We do a Saturday make a mess on purpose thing. Parents panic. Kids remember it forever. Charlie would make a spreadsheet about glue sticks, James said. Mark would eat the glitter. Edible glitter exists, Joy said. Ask me how I know. How do you? Donations, she deadpanned. People donate anything if you give them a receipt. Hannah texted then. His phone buzzed on the table. He flipped it face down, careful, but Joy's eyes had already flicked to it and away. Polite, curious human. Everything okay? She asked. Work, he said, because it was simple and true. Hannah again. Reminder. Other party under Jamie, never checked in. Want me to cancel the ghost table? A pause. Then another. Also, Sophie texted 5 minutes ago. Says she's sorry about the mix-up. Family emergency. Sophie. The woman he was supposed to meet. The one whose profile mentioned classical music and hiking boots and a dog named after a pastry. He felt a strange, skewed gratitude for Sophie, for the mercy of missed trains. You look like you're doing calculus, Joy said. Just adjusting expectations, he answered. They finished with tart au citron and a debate about whether sour can be a kind of happy. Joy wiped powdered sugar from Mark's cheek with the ease of someone who didn't perform it, just did it. Charlie asked if commas in French were different. Joy said all commas are just pauses that let feelings catch up. When the bill came, James reached for it. Joy reached for her bag. I can, he began. We can, she said, gentle but firm. Rain's expensive. He wanted to argue. He wanted to say he'd pay because it pleased him to. He wanted to say he'd pay because that's what his father had modeled, and modeling mattered. Instead, he nodded, split it cleanly, and discovered the small, sharp pleasure of being ordinary. The last awkwardness, the one he'd been both fearing and craving, stood at the door with them. The moment a night decides whether it will be an only or an again. I walk this way, Joy said, hooking the umbrella over her wrist. The 49 bus thinks we're in a relationship. We're 2 blocks down, James said. The Subaru and I are going through a separation. They smiled at each other, that ridiculous sweet ache opening like a pocket of warm air. Would you? He began and then stopped. He could not invite her into a life she didn't know she was entering. Not on a lie, not even a little one. Do you ever come by the center? Joy asked instead, as if she'd read his cowardice and forgiven it in the same breath. Greenwood Community Center Library, Saturday at 10. Glitter happens. I could do Saturday, he said, and it felt like a vow. They stepped into the night. Joy opened the umbrella and angled it so it covered all 3 of them, which made no physical sense and every emotional kind. Mark reached up to touch the ribs of it. Charlie announced that umbrellas are just portable roofs and ought to have zoning laws. At the corner, Joy hesitated. Tiny beat, enough to fit a hope inside. Alex will be annoyed, she said lightly. He doesn't love rain as much as I do. Alex, James echoed. Tonight's supposed to be, she admitted. It's a long story. He could have told her then. He could have said, mine didn't come either. Her name is Sophie, and I should have said something when you sat down. The words hovered. They had weight and a right to be spoken. Maybe tell me next time, Joy said, as if she'd been offered an explanation and chosen a promise instead. Next time, James agreed. They crossed at the light. The bistro dimmed behind them until it was only a warm square on a wet street. Joy's bus wheezed up to the curb. She climbed on backward, smiling through the glass in a way that made the evening feel not lucky but inevitable. She tapped the window twice, a code he didn't know yet and wanted to learn. James watched the bus pull away, umbrella water stippling his cap. He took the boy's hands and tried to memorize the ordinary miracle of 3 people walking toward a car after dinner. In the Subaru, Mark fell asleep mid-sentence, holding a crust like treasure. Charlie buckled himself in and stared out at the city. The Ferris wheel a silver ghost across the water, the faint upglow of South Lake Union, the cranes that built tomorrow. Dad? He asked. Yeah. Did we meet someone important? James thought about names he wasn't using and truths he hadn't told. About a library that smelled like future and glue. I think we did, he said. His phone buzzed once more before he put it in the glove compartment. A message from Hannah. All good. Sophie rescheduled. Also, press asked again if you'll be at the fundraiser Tuesday. I told them maybe. James typed back with one hand on the wheel. Tell them I'm a solid maybe. And Hannah? Can you find out if the Greenwood Community Center needs volunteers Saturday mornings? A beat. Then, you planning to be anonymous? Trying to be human, he wrote. Rain ticked on the roof like a lullaby. Seattle blurred into soft lanes of light. In the rear view, Mark slept open-mouthed. Beside him, Charlie plotted glitter management strategies that would fail in precisely the right way. At a red light, James finally allowed himself to imagine Joy telling Bella about bread tests and umbrella ethics, about the wrong table and the right laugh. He didn't think about headlines or committee dinners or the elevator ride to the Denton Global Group floor in South Lake Union, where the air smelled like new carpet and caution. He thought about a room with tiny chairs and paper crowns, and a woman who believed commas were merciful. He didn't tell the boys that their mother would have liked Joy. That truth belonged to a later chapter. For now, there was the soft clunk of the light turning green, the quiet work of getting everyone home, and the improbable fact that a night can open like a door if you stop guarding it. Somewhere across town, a notification blinked on a phone belonging to a woman named Sophie Lane, the date who never arrived, while in another apartment, a man named Alex scrolled through a thread and wondered whether he'd sat at the wrong table after all. Saturday smelled like wet cedar and photocopier ink when Joy cranked open the windows at the Greenwood Community Center Library. The rain had been kind at dawn and cruel at 9. By 10 it beat a small tattoo on the eaves and made the balloons she'd tied to the doorway bob their heads as if in approval. Inside, tables wore butcher paper and bowls of washable markers. An industrial tub of glitter sat like a dare. On the whiteboard she had written, "Make a mess on purpose," then added, smaller, "We clean together. Pinky promise." Bella arrived first, as predicted, with 2 coffees and a look that meant she'd already invented 3 opinions about Joy's life before breakfast. "You look like a person who slept for 5 minutes and dreamed about glue sticks," Bella said, handing over a cup. "For minutes," Joy corrected. "And edible glitter. Is that ethically sourced?" "Donated," Joy deadpanned. "From a bakery that believes in chaos." Bella scanned the room, then Joy's face, then the doorway in a single sweep that said, "Yes, I'm your friend and also your smoke detector." "Is he coming?" "It's a public event," Joy said, too carefully. "You're quoting the poster at me." "That's a yes." Joy sipped and tried not to smile. They hadn't exchanged last names. They hadn't talked about salaries or trajectories or the places people keep their pride. He was just Jamie, the father with tired eyes who listened like listening was a sport. That should have been enough data. But the part of her that paid bills and learned to triangulate people by their phones, shoes, and how they apologized had its questions. Parents and kids trickled in. Toddlers in dinosaur raincoats, twins who spoke to each other in code, a 5th grader who declared himself architect of the fort. Joy knelt to eye level and asked names like she was collecting rare gemstones. She wrote them on blue painter's tape and stuck them on shirts with ceremony. She showed Bella the new book about thunderstorms and brave umbrellas. She turned on the kettle behind the staff desk for emergency tea. And then he was there. James stood in the doorway with Charlie and Mark, all 3 damp around the edges. His cap was gone, revealing hair that had decided to surrender at the temples and do it handsomely. He held a paper sack like an offering. "You made it," Joy said, and hated that her voice climbed a rung on a ladder called relief. "Would not miss sanctioned chaos," James said. "We brought these." He opened the sack. Blueberries in a clamshell, 2 bananas, and a box of butter cookies with a ribbon, the kind you always think are sewing kits until you open them. "Approved," Joy said. "Just don't tell the custodians I sanctioned glitter." Charlie drifted toward the whiteboard like a moth to a formula. Mark made a beeline for the glitter, stopped, looked at Joy and waited. "Today's rules," she said, and the room improbably quieted. "We make a mess on purpose, but we practice 3 magics. Ask, share, help clean. Who can repeat that?" Ask, share, help clean. Charlie echoed, satisfied. Addendum. Bella cut in, adopting a town crier's voice. All glue sticks must be returned to the glue stick population at the end of class. We're very pro-democracy, Joy explained. Bella, James said, and they shook hands like two cats deciding they could co-own a sunny patch. Joy watched Bella watch him file, flag, suspend judgment. It made something in Joy's chest unclench. They built a cardboard city that looked like Seattle if Seattle had taken a course on whimsy. Popsicle stick Space Needle, bottle cap Ferris wheel, a chalk river running between neighborhoods labeled now and soon. Mark campaigned for the glitter to be snow. Charlie argued for stars. Compromise sparkled everywhere. Joy floated through it all, pinning tape, cutting shapes, and, when Mark's lower lip worked itself into a knot, kneeling to demonstrate that mistakes could become comets. Comets? Mark asked, dubious. You just add a tail, Joy said, drawing 3 quick lines behind an accidental blob. Now it's on a mission. What mission? To find someone who needs it, she said simply. James watched her when she didn't know he was watching. How she normalized error the way some people normalize weather. How she laughed without checking if anyone had paid attention. How she made room for Charlie's rules and Mark's phenomena. He felt a foolish, fierce tug in his chest, the kind that had undone better men than him. He answered it by finding a broom, because sometimes the safest way to say I'm here is to sweep confetti into a pile no vacuum could end. Half an hour in, the parents migrated to the coffee corner and constructed a conversational fort about school districts and pediatric dentists. Bella stationed herself with them like a spy. James lingered at the edges, neither here nor there, a man in a borrowed life that fit too well. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. It buzzed again. Joy saw the movement, saw the restraint, and for a flicker thought he's practicing something too. The third buzz came with a tone that meant the sender would keep going. He fished the phone out with an apology in his eyebrows. Hannah, donations ready. Do you want me to drop them or ship? Hannah. Also, media pinged again Tuesday fundraiser. RSVP. Hannah. P.S. Sophie asked for your email to send a thank you. You want me to pass it or say you'll text? A small, ridiculous universe in 3 bubbles. He typed back in the shorthand you invent with people who carry your chaos without complaint. Drop, anonymous. Maybe on Tuesday. Sophie. I'll text a kind decline. Hannah. Copy. I might swing by myself to see the mess. James stared at that for a second too long. Swing by. Here. The part of him that had installed a 6-syllable firewall around his personal life blinked awake. Everything okay? Joy asked softly, stacking scissors into a metal caddy like tiny silver oars. Work, he said. A friend is threatening to donate craft supplies. Joy tilted her head. Threatening? Friendly threatening, he amended. She's persuasive. Can we survive more glitter? Joy called to the room at large. A dozen small hands shot up as if this were a referendum on joy itself. Bella reappeared like an answer to a question no one had asked aloud. I need to borrow this one, she said, pointing at Joy, then at the hallway. Urgent consultation. In the hallway, under a bulletin board that begged for volunteers and offered free tax prep on Wednesdays, Bella folded her arms. I like him, she said without ceremony. He listens. The kids orbit him and don't crash. He didn't flinch when Todd's mom brought up the PDA as if it were a cartel. Joy smiled despite herself. That's generous for you. But I'm not blind. Bella added. He keeps glancing at that phone like it's a confession booth. And the shoes. What about the shoes? They've been resold twice, but they were expensive once, Bella said, which either means fiscal prudence or a past life with very good carpet. You're profiling him via cobbler. It's a service. Bella softened. You like him. He likes you. Begin there. Just don't let anyone conduct sociological experiments on your heart. Joy thought about the Jamie of last night, the moment he hadn't corrected her, the small flinch when she'd said Alex. What if the experiment already started? She admitted. What if I like the feeling more than the facts? Then we gather facts, Bella said, wickedly calm. We're librarians. We're allergic to holes in the narrative. Promise me you'll be kind if it's complicated, Joy said. I'm a hammer with a soft grip, Bella said. Ask him a real question. Back in the room, the cardboard city had annexed a new district labeled Maybe. James was teaching Charlie to weigh a tower with his hand, reading its balance like a secret. Mark had glitter on his eyelashes and looked happier than legality allowed. Question, Joy said, squatting by the table. Do you two want to build a bridge from now to soon or from soon to maybe? Maybe is dangerous, Charlie declared. We don't know the regulations. That's what makes it interesting, James murmured, not looking at her, his voice cautious and warm. They made the bridge anyway, because there is no point building cities if you won't complicate them. Joy handed James the tape gun. He used it like a man who had once built an IKEA bookcase at 3 in the morning and watched his life fall into a pattern of Allen keys and persistence. At 11, Hannah materialized, no fanfare, 2 tote bags, a rain jacket the color of declarations. She looked younger in Saturday light, and Joy clocked it steadier, like a person who could hold other people's weather. She caught James's eye, then Joy's, and recalibrated her face in a second. Hi, Hannah said, setting the bags down. I'm Hannah, a friend. These are for the sanctioned chaos. Friend? Bella echoed from behind Joy with the tone of a person testing cutlery for sharpness. Joy opened the totes. Someone, Hannah, had sourced small containers with lids, enough for each kid, and labels pre-printed with names. There were brushes, glue sticks, construction paper in colors that proved the universe likes variety. At the bottom of one tote, wrapped in craft paper, sat a box of something that clinked. Tambourines, Joy guessed, because if you're going to regret something, Hannah said, regret it while keeping rhythm. The kids discovered percussion as if inventing thunder. The room went briefly feral. Joy laughed, then winced, then laughed again. Hannah caught James's look and shrugged a tiny apology and a bigger "you're welcome." Who are you really? Bella whispered to James when Joy moved to rescue a glue stick from a goldfish. Someone trying to be useful, James said, eyes on Joy. That's not a last name, Bella replied, unfold. Hannah stayed an hour, then peeled away with a promise to return for cleanup if civilization fell. Before she left, she caught Joy by the door. He's better with fewer people, she said in a quick undertone, surprising Joy with the intimacy. This is a good few. Is he okay? Joy asked before she could convince herself to mind her own business. Hannah considered Joy for a heartbeat longer than casual would require. He's trying, she said. That's not small. The program ended with a chorus of tambourines that sounded like coins poured onto a wooden table. Parents collected children. Children collected masterpieces. The cardboard city stood messy and triumphant and precarious, which is how cities stand. Joy sprayed tables with vinegar and water, Kids grabbed paper towels and pretended to compete at wiping. Mark, appointed glitter minister, made a ceremony of carrying the tub to the supply closet. Charlie cataloged the survivor glue sticks. "You stayed," Joy said to James, which was silly because he was very obviously still there. But she meant you stayed for all of it. The noise, the cleaning, the small negotiations we pretend are nothing and that make a life. "I like rules that end with a shared chore," he said. "It feels like truth." They walked the block for sandwiches because edible glitter is not a lunch. Bella came reluctantly. "Someone has to be your chaperone." Then inexplicably went into the deli first, ordered 2 bagels, paid in cash and left, claiming a hair appointment. Joy didn't question miracles. At a tiny table by the window, condensation made moons on their cups. Outside, Greenwood Avenue threw its weekend parade. Dogs in sweaters, couples sharing umbrellas, a man who danced as if rain were applause. Mark drew comic strips on napkins featuring a heroic umbrella and a villainous puddle. Charlie made a chart of acceptable sandwich-to-pickle ratios. "You didn't correct me last night," Joy said quietly as James concentrated on cutting Mark's sandwich into geometric plausibility. "When I called you Alex." James set the knife down. The space between them sharpened as if someone had dialed the room into focus. "I should have," he said. "I wanted to. And then you said I'm fine right here and I got greedy. I wanted to keep the night the way it was." "I like the way it was," Joy said. "I also like the truth." He nodded, leaned forward, elbows on the table like a man entering a confessional without a priest. "My name is James," he said. "Friends call me Jamie. Last night I borrowed the ladder because it felt small enough to fit on a napkin." "And today?" she asked. "Today, you can call me what feels true," he said. "I'll answer to both." Joy let that sit between them, a little wry, a little tender. "Okay, James, who is Jamie?" she said. "I need to tell you a thing of equal importance. I texted Alex this morning. And we're not each other's plot twist," she said, shrugging. "He has a gentle way, but we'd exhaust each other trying to be excited about the same things. He said he hopes I find whatever felt right about last night, which is either mature or passive-aggressive, but I vote mature." James smiled down into his coffee. "That's kind," he said. "And Sophie, the woman who didn't make it, had a family emergency and sent a very classy apology through a friend. I wrote back that I'm glad she's okay and that he looked up, that I met someone by accident who felt like a better reason to be late." "Was that to the friend?" Joy asked, amused. "To the universe," he said. "And the friend." She watched him for a time measured in gulps and the way Mark made sound effects with every bite. "James," she said at last, "what do you do when it isn't raining?" He laughed softly. "I design things," he said again, knowing this was the moment the question wanted more. "And I attend meetings where people who like to measure things try to measure the unmeasurable. I fix dryers. I learn about glitter. He stopped, the shape of a sentence he didn't want yet to say collapsing in his throat. "You don't have to give me a resume," Joy said. "Just don't give me evasive synonyms." "That's fair," he said. "I work with companies. Help them decide where to place their bets. Sometimes I forget to place my own." Joy nodded, struck unexpectedly by the sadness of that. "Do you want to come by the center on Tuesday?" she asked, changing the subject gently. "We're reading about a rabbit who thinks thunder is a monster, and Mark has strong opinions. That's also the night a thing might happen," he admitted. "A fundraiser I've been pretending to be a maybe about." Do you like fundraisers? Joy asked. I like good causes, he said. I dislike being decorative. Then come be useful, she said. I'll give you a job that isn't clapping. He breathed out. I'll try, he said. That's not a hedge. It's me being brave in very small increments. They walked back in a lighter rain that made the street look photographed. Mark puddle-tested his boots. Charlie narrated cloud behavior like a tiny meteorologist. At the center's door, Joy turned to James and, because she had promised Bella and herself not to let the feeling outrun the facts, held his gaze. I like you, she said plainly. I don't like surprises that feel like tests. Don't test me. He flinched, and she hated that, but better the wince now than a wound later. I won't, he said. If anything feels like one, it's me testing myself. You can boo. I boo with compassion, she said. But I boo. They stood there, two people in a city that taught you to carry your own weather, and did a small brave thing. They named the shape of what they were trying. On the bulletin board behind them, beneath the flyers for ESL conversation hours and a poster decorated by children's handprints, someone had pinned a note. Volunteers needed, Saturdays. James reached up and took a tab with the email address as if this were a vow you could tear along perforation. Hey! Charlie called from inside. Our city needs zoning. I'm needed, James said, and made the words sound like a privilege. They cleaned again because messes have a way of multiplying when you're not looking. Joy unlocked the staff closet and found, beside the vacuum and the mop and the stern sign about NO glitter in the sink, a tall step stool. She lugged it out to change a flickering tube light, then realized she was 5 inches shorter than her optimism. James steadied the stool without being asked, palm light on the rail, eyes on her ankle like a doctor willing gravity to behave. You're very not decorative, Joy said from the second step. Don't tell the committee, he said. Which committee? She asked, descending onto a safe tile with the victory of an astronaut. The one that thinks applause equals impact, he said. I'm trying to wean myself off it. She laughed, pocketed the dead bulb like a moon. You can wean yourself at the paint station Tuesday, she said. Very little applause. Much splatter. The boys did a victory lap to say goodbye to the city they'd built, promising to return for urban planning. Joy watched James watch them and thought, not a test, a try. Outside, Bella waited under the library awning with a bag and an expression that said she had not, in fact, had a hair appointment. She handed Joy a container of cut fruit and a folded note. What's this? Joy asked, peeking. Insurance, Bella said. The fruit is because you forget to eat when your pulse is busy. The note is because I went on the center's website to check the donations log. Don't look at me like that, you knew I would, and someone just sent an anonymous craft grant. Guess who? Bella? Joy warned, mortified and, annoyingly, touched. I'm not mad, Bella said. I'm wary adjacent. People do good things for good reasons, and sometimes they do them to manage outcomes. Just know the difference. I know, Joy said. I intend to know more. Bella turned to James, studied him as if he were a draft she could mark up. You're invited to pass my test, she said. Does it involve bread? He asked, deadpan. Worse, she said. It involves showing up the second time without bringing anything but yourself. I can do that, he said softly. Prove it, Bella replied, but her mouth had the shape of a truce. They parted, logistics like breadcrumbs. Texts exchanged, first names and a rabbit emoji. Times proposed, Tuesday 5:30. An agreement that if Seattle did its Seattle thing and flooded the buses with rain, They'd make boats out of cardboard and call it art. On the drive home, Mark drew endpoints on the fogged window with his finger. Now and soon, connected by a line that wobbled and kept going. Charlie added maybe just off to the side. Then a tiny bridge. What's maybe for? Mark asked. For the days when you need a safe place to stand until you know, Charlie said, 8 going on ancient. James listened to them and to the city's hush and to a voice inside that had not spoken in months. Don't mess this up by pretending it's a puzzle to solve, it said. Let it be a person to know. His phone lit again at a stoplight. Hannah, anonymous drop complete. Your friend is formidable. I like her. He typed, me too. Then, because he was learning to place his bets, he added, I'm not going to the fundraiser Tuesday. Hannah, copy. Should I tell Pierre you're donating the tickets? Give them to the junior analyst who actually loves that room, he wrote. I have a paint station to run. Hannah, understood. Also, media asked where you've been hiding. I said, in plain sight. He smiled, put the phone face down and didn't check it again. That night, after the boys surrendered to sleep and the house made those good small noises that make you think of boats and dogs and old wood, James sat at the kitchen table with the craft grant receipt Hannah had emailed for his records. It didn't have his name on it. It didn't need to. He wrote a different name on a different line. Saturday, 5:30, library. Then, because no one was there to witness or make it large, he spoke a vow out loud to the coffee maker and the quiet. No tests, just showing up. Across town, Joy washed her hair twice because the smell of vinegar had declared tenancy. She held Bella's note again, read the 2 sentences written in her friend's precise hand. He feels real. Real needs room. Make sure you keep enough for you. She slid the note under a magnet shaped like a pear and looked at the cardboard city blueprint she'd stolen from the recycle bin. Now, soon, maybe. She drew one more word in the corner, small enough to be a secret. Together. On Monday, an email from Sophie Lane arrived in James's inbox, gentle and complete, thanking him for understanding and wishing him good things without trying to own them. He stared at it longer than the text required, grateful for the graciousness of strangers, then archived it like a man choosing a shelf for a book he'd never read again. On Tuesday, Seattle woke up undecided about weather and decided on all of them. Joy packed gallon bags for paint shirts and reminded Bella twice to hold the line against tambourines. James printed the volunteer form and signed only his first name. Charlie argued that rabbits can, in fact, battle thunder. Mark drew an umbrella with teeth. At 5:27, James and the boys stood under the library awning, 3 damp figures with a roll of painter's tape and a timid kind of hope. Joy opened the door with a grin that looked like it had been waiting for them. No bouquets, no declarations, no tests, just the quiet kind of arrival that makes a person think, I've been here before in a better life and I'm finally remembering the way back. The Denton house was not the kind of mansion magazines drooled over. It sat on a quiet street in Ballard, 2 stories of cedar siding and windows, fogged with condensation from a heater that worked overtime against Seattle's damp moods. The lawn was modest, the hedges imperfect, the porch paint chipped. Joy had walked past places like this 100 times, places that looked lived in, not curated. She hadn't imagined James Denton lived in one. Take your shoes off, please, James said as he unlocked the door, ushering Charlie and Mark inside. Mud and glitter aren't friends. Glitter has no enemies, Mark declared, hopping on one foot as he wrestled off a boot. Joy hesitated on the threshold. She'd expected sleek, cold, expensive. Instead, she smelled tomato sauce and saw a crooked picture frame on the entry wall, a drawing of a dragon labeled in Charlie's handwriting. Fire science, age 7. "This is home," James said simply, catching her pause. "Home. Not fortress. Not showroom. Home." The living room had mismatched couches, a tower of board games leaning like Pisa in the corner, and a rug patterned with toy car tracks. On the coffee table, 3 mugs, one chipped, one with a faded college logo, one that said "World's Okayest Dad." Joy laughed. "Okayest. Mark picked it," James admitted. "He thought it was hilarious. I was aiming for adequate. Adequate dad mugs are backordered," Charlie said, completely serious. Mark pulled Joy toward the couch. "We're showing you Space Journey. Dad promised you'd watch. Pilot episode only," James said, holding up a hand. "Some people," he looked at Joy, "might not be ready for intergalactic diplomacy at bedtime." They settled with popcorn that smelled faintly burnt. Charlie curled with a notebook for observations. Mark half on Joy's lap before she even realized it. James sat at the far end of the couch, one arm draped along the back, not touching her, but close enough that she felt his presence like warmth through fabric. The show was a blur of capes and lasers. What Joy noticed wasn't on the screen. It was how James listened to Mark's questions as if each was a Senate hearing. How he smiled sideways when Charlie corrected plot holes. How his laugh, quiet, surprised, sounded like it had been in storage too long. Halfway through, Joy glanced at the mantel. A single photograph stood there, framed in oak. A woman with light hair, holding a toddler version of Charlie, sunlight on her shoulders. The absence of newer frames spoke louder than any explanation. Joy looked away quickly. She didn't ask. Not yet. When the credits rolled, Mark was asleep against her shoulder, glitter still glinting faintly in his hair. Charlie padded upstairs to brush his teeth, narrating the steps like a checklist. James muted the TV. The sudden quiet felt fragile. "They like you," he said. "They're easy to like," she replied. His eyes softened. "That's not always how people see it." "Then those people don't know children," Joy said, more firmly than she meant. "Or maybe they don't know kindness." James studied her as if she'd said something he'd been waiting to hear. "Kindness is underrated," he said finally. Silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. Joy felt the pull of it, the way you feel a tide even before the waves reach your ankles. "Do you want tea?" he asked, breaking it gently. In the kitchen, she perched on a stool while he boiled water. The counters were cluttered. Cereal boxes, a forgotten lunchbox, a vase of dying tulips. He moved through the mess without apology. "My assistant says I should learn to outsource better," he said wryly. "Your assistant is probably right," Joy teased. "But then you'd miss out on the fine art of burning popcorn." He smiled, handed her a mug. Their fingers brushed. Static or something older than electricity. Before she could find words, her phone buzzed. "Bella, are you still breathing? Or did you drown in dad jokes?" Joy typed back quickly, "Breathing. Warm couch. Popcorn casualty. Bella, careful. Warm couches become traps." Joy slipped the phone face down. When she looked up, James was watching her. Not suspicious, just present, as though he already knew Bella's typewritten voice. They talked about small things. Joy's favorite children's book, The Velveteen Rabbit, James's failed attempt at sourdough last winter, the time Charlie tried to install a security system with string and bells across the hallway. But underneath, something larger moved, unspoken. Joy, James said quietly when her tea was half gone. I should tell you. Footsteps on the stairs interrupted him. Charlie appeared, solemn, holding a folded piece of paper. I made this, he said, handing it to Joy. Inside, drawn in pencil, was a stick-figure family. James, Charlie, Mark, and her. Joy blinked hard. That's draft one, Charlie said. We can edit if necessary. James looked stricken and grateful all at once. Joy touched Charlie's shoulder. It's perfect as it is. After bedtime, the house exhaled. Dishes clinked as James rinsed them. Joy dried. Their hands met over a plate, lingered, withdrew. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice low, different from the one he used in public. Thank you for inviting me, she answered. For a heartbeat, the air bent between them, charged, expectant. His gaze dropped to her lips. She didn't look away. Then Mark's voice floated from upstairs. Half asleep. Dad? My blanket fell. James's breath caught. The moment dissolved like sugar in tea. I'll get it, he whispered and went. Joy stood in the kitchen, heart unsteady, staring at the paper towel rack as though it could offer advice. She knew what Bella would say. Don't fall into lives that aren't yours to keep. But she also knew the look in James's eyes hadn't been a test. It had been a try. When she left later, rain soft on the driveway, James walked her to the car. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. Tuesday? She asked. Tuesday, he promised. As she drove off, Joy touched Charlie's drawing folded in her bag. She knew she should be cautious. Instead, she whispered the word that had been penciled under the stick figures in a child's hand. Together. Seattle had a way of putting secrets on billboards without asking permission. On Tuesday morning, Joy stood in the break room of the Greenwood Community Center, balancing her mug of burnt coffee, when Bella's voice burst through her phone like a siren. Don't faint, Bella said. Open the Seattle Tribune site. Now. Joy frowned, tapped. The headline read, Denton Global CEO skips fundraiser. Spotted in Greenwood with mystery woman. Beneath it, a photo. Her. Umbrella angled over Charlie and Mark. Laughing, James walking beside her. The caption, James Denton, 39, of Denton Global Group, with unidentified companion. Joy's chest seized. James Denton. Not Jamie. Not the soft-voiced man who'd learned to tape cardboard cities with kids. Denton Global Group. She knew the name. Everyone in Seattle did. Mergers. Skyscraper panels. Fundraisers that looked like fashion shows. Her phone buzzed again. Bella. Please tell me you already knew. Joy couldn't type back. The coffee tasted like metal. She remembered his hesitation in the restaurant, the texts he deflected, the way Hannah had arrived at the library with supplies no ordinary friend could conjure. It wasn't shyness. It wasn't modesty. It was omission. By lunch, the staff had seen the article. Parents whispered at pickup, Isn't that Joy? Did you know? The director of the center chuckled nervously. Well, at least it's good publicity. Joy smiled through her teeth and locked herself in the supply closet until the trembling stopped. That evening, James texted, We're still on for tonight? The boys want to show you their new fort. She typed, erased, typed again. We need to talk. His house felt different when she arrived, warmer, but also sharper, like a stage she hadn't consented to. James met her at the door, relief in his eyes, a dish towel in one hand. You saw it, he said before she spoke. I saw it, she replied. He set the towel down, tried for honesty. I should have told you. Not just the name. All of it. Why didn't you? Her voice cracked against the restraint she'd practiced all afternoon. Did you want to see if I'd treat you differently? Was I some kind of experiment? No, he stepped forward, stopped himself. Joy, I was tired of being a headline. I wanted one evening where I wasn't a CEO. I was just a dad with 2 kids and a terrible sense of humor. And then you walked in, and he broke off. I was selfish. I didn't want to lose it by telling you the truth too soon. She shook her head. Selfish is asking me to share dessert. This was deception. Mark barreled into the room with a blanket cape, oblivious. Joy, come see our fort. Her heart tore. She crouched, hugged him, whispered, later, superhero. Charlie appeared behind him, wary, scanning the room like a strategist. He already sensed the fault lines. Joy stood. I can't be part of this circus, James. I didn't sign up to be photographed, judged, whispered about. You won't be, he promised, desperate. I'll shield you. She laughed, bitter. You can't shield me from the internet, from people asking why I matter to you, from myself, wondering if I matter at all when you couldn't even tell me your name. The boys were listening. She saw it in Charlie's eyes, the question. Are you leaving? I need space, she said, softer now. For me. For them. Later, in the quiet after she'd gone, James sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. Hannah came by, called by instinct more than text. She found him there, mug untouched. She saw the article? He nodded. You knew this was coming. I thought I could buy us more time, he admitted. I thought maybe, if she loved the boys, if she laughed with us long enough, the name wouldn't matter. Hannah pulled out a chair. It matters, James. Not the name. The hiding. You asked her to trust someone who didn't trust her with the truth. That's not a test she failed. That's one you failed. He winced. I didn't want to test her. Then stop framing it like one, Hannah said sharply. If you want her, go as yourself. No disguises. No shields. Just you. Otherwise, you'll keep choosing secrets over love. Across town, Joy sat at Bella's kitchen table, untouched tea cooling beside her. Bella said nothing for a long time, just let the silence breathe. Finally, Joy whispered, I liked him before I knew. I liked him because he was ordinary with me. What if none of that was real? Bella reached over, squeezed her hand. Maybe it was real, but you don't have to decide tonight. Space isn't surrender. It's survival. Joy nodded, eyes wet. She thought of Charlie's drawing, folded in her bag. She didn't throw it away. She couldn't. But she also couldn't walk back into a storm and call it shelter. That night, Seattle's rain carved stories down window panes. James sat in a house that felt too quiet. Joy lay awake in Bella's spare room, staring at the ceiling. Both thought of forts and cardboard cities and promises made too easily. Both wondered if maybe, this time, the word together had been written too soon. The week after the article moved like a storm that wouldn't commit. Sun for an hour, then sideways rain, then a wind that rearranged even the steady things. Joy walked to work with her hood up and her gaze down, learning the choreography of eyes that recognized her. That's the woman from the photo. Parents were kind in the way people are kind when they are also curious. Kids were simpler. They held up their art and asked for more glue. She circled the library like a ship captain, steering through morning programs and afternoon homework club and the occasional crisis involving a stapler. She answered emails, reshelved books, mended a paperback whose spine had given up. Every task felt like a small vow to the life she could control. Bella did what Bella does, ran interference. She intercepted a blogger at the door. We are a children's program, not a press conference. Made a laminated sign about privacy, and drafted a sentence Joy could repeat without shaking. I'm keeping my life offline. When Joy's voice wobbled on my life, Bella squeezed her shoulder once and didn't let go until the wobble passed. On Thursday, a courier brought a package. No return address. Just Joy's name written in a steady hand. Inside, a roll of brown craft paper tied with baker's twine. No note. She set it aside. She restocked crayons. She pretended her pulse wasn't counting to something. At closing, when the last toddler had been peeled from the reading rug and the last teenager had promised to return the calculator, Joy untied the twine and unrolled the paper on the big table. A house drawn in careful pencil lines. 2 windows, a door, a little path that zigzagged to a mailbox. On the porch, 3 stick figures holding what looked like hot chocolate mugs. 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 small with a cape. Off to the side, a 4th figure under an umbrella, sketched lightly at first and then traced darker, like someone had made up their mind. Above the house, in block letters, a title, Room Enough. Joy's breath hitched. She traced the shaky M in room with her fingertip. Charlie's letters. Mark's cape. The umbrella hers. Anonymous. Bella asked from the doorway, already knowing. Joy nodded. Do you want to be alone, or do you want company pretending not to cry? Bella asked. Company, Joy said, and Bella came to stand beside her. Both of them leaning over the table like curators of something fragile and important. Not a test, Bella said softly. An invitation. Joy swallowed. What if I want to say yes and no at the same time? Then you say not yet and mean maybe, Bella said. Also, Hannah called. Joy blinked. She has my number? She has every number, Bella said. She wanted you to know he's been spending nights packing supply boxes, and that he turned down 3 interviews, even the friendly ones. No statements, no spin. That supposed to fix it? Joy asked, trying for hard and reaching only tired. It's supposed to be a fact, Bella said. Do with it what you like. Joy rolled the drawing back up, tied the twine, and put it behind the staff desk as if it were a book on hold for a patron with a very specific name. That night, she took the bus home and didn't put on music. She let the squeak of wipers and the sigh of the doors narrate the city. She pictured James at his kitchen table with a stack of boxes and a roll of tape. She pictured Charlie measuring out the exact center of a piece of paper and Mark resisting the urge to draw teeth on the umbrella. She pictured Hannah leaving the spare key on the hook because boundaries are love when power is uneven. At her apartment, Joy set the drawing on the table and told herself to sleep. She didn't. She read 3 chapters of a novel and none of it stayed. She finally texted Bella. If I break my own rule and answer, does that break me? Bella, answer on your terms and set new rules. Joy, what if he's waiting for me to do the emotional labor? Bella, then we'll know. My money is on him showing up the right way. He's learning. Clumsily, which is better than cleverly. Joy, clumsy I can forgive. Bella, then sleep. Or at least pretend. I'll bring bagels in the morning. James did not sleep either. He had told the boys they were doing night chores, which made everything noble. They set up an assembly line. Hannah dropped off flat-packed boxes and a list. James and Charlie filled them with brushes, glue sticks, paper. Mark drew a sticker for each lit hearts, stars, a heroic rabbit. The kitchen floor looked like a craft store had exploded with good intentions. At 9:30, James called a pause and poured milk for Mark and tea for Charlie and coffee for himself he didn't intend to drink. The boys leaned against him, warm and heavy, the way children are when they trust the world enough to get close. "She's mad," Mark announced to the carton of milk. "She's allowed," James said. "Are you mad?" Charlie asked, clinical. "At me," James said. "Often, yes." "At her," Charlie clarified. James shook his head. "No," he said. "Not at her." "Good," Charlie said, satisfied. "Because she's nice. And good people can be mad and still good." James put his cup down and closed his eyes for a second because sometimes the truth comes out of a small mouth with an alarming lack of preamble. "Can we see her?" Mark whispered, and there it was, the ache James had been trying to manage like a spreadsheet and failing. "Not until she says," James answered, and pulling that word, until, through his throat felt like lifting something heavier than boxes. They finished at 10. Hannah texted from the porch. "Boxes picked up. Also for posterity. I saw you tell a 5-year-old not yet and survive. Progress." He texted back a thank you and a rabbit emoji and a very unfunny joke about capital expenditure. When the house quieted, James took out a pad of paper, the kind he used for timelines, and wrote at the top, "No tests. No statements. No rescue missions." Under it, he wrote, "What I owe Joy if I want to earn a second chance. A truth told first, not forced. Respect for boundaries in public and private. Father first, CEO somewhere down the list. Choices that prove I'm choosing her world as much as I ask her to choose mine. Patience without presuming outcome." He stared at the list long enough to hate it for its bullet points and then loved it for being something he could hold. At midnight, he wrote one more line, smaller. "Show up with empty hands and honest words." On Friday, Joy found a note in the staff inbox. It was on center letterhead, signed by the director, politely asking if she'd consider moving her Saturday program to Sunday just this once. Because a donor tour had been scheduled last minute, and the board felt it would be cleaner without children everywhere. Joy smiled at the passive-aggressive quotation marks around cleaner and felt very awake. She walked down the hallway, found the director, and said, "No." When the director began to say, "Optics," Joy said, "Children are not optics." And then, because she is a person who believes in bridges, she offered, "What if the tour comes through silently at the end and sees a community cleaning up together?" The director blinked, recalculated, and nodded. Sometimes integrity can be negotiated into common sense. At noon, Joy sent a text to a number she had not used since the night she'd asked for space. "Saturday, 10 a.m. If you come with empty hands." There was a minute where she counted the seconds and a minute where she hated herself for counting, and then her phone buzzed. "Understood. We'll be there. No hands but ours." She wanted to add conditions and probabilities and a disclaimer about her heart. She didn't. She turned off her phone and went back to taping a ripped poster about summer reading. Saturday arrived dressed as Seattle. The balloons nodded in the doorway again. Good soldiers. Joy wrote "Make a mess on purpose" on the whiteboard and added beneath it, "We clean together. Pinky promise." She wore her apron with the paint smudges and put her hair up and put courage where her earrings would be if she wore them. At 9:58, she heard the shuffle of small shoes and the scritch of a cheap umbrella. Mark appeared first, the cape replaced by a backpack. Charlie followed with a box labeled "Bridges" only in block letters. Then James, hands in his pockets, chin unarmored. A man who had thought all night about how not to perform kindness and decided the answer was to do it. He stopped a shelf length away and didn't ask, "Are we okay?" He said, "Thank you for inviting us." His voice was steady, not rehearsed. He looked like a person standing in line for mercy without cutting. Joy nodded once. "Ground rules haven't changed," she said, "because it was easier to begin there than anywhere tender. Ask, share, help clean," Charlie said. "We remember. And no tambourines until after 10:30, Joy added. Charlie grimaced in solidarity. Mark whispered, "Yes." Like a pact breaker, they began. There's a magic to the first 20 minutes of a children's program, the way attention blooms like algae under the right light. Joy moved from table to table, and James hovered at the edges until Mark tugged him into the gravity of glue. Charlie took over logistics, as is the birthright of older siblings, and constructed a bridge so precise it looked like math flirting with art. Parents filed in. No cameras. The laminated sign Bella had made worked like a spell. When someone new began to raise a phone, Bella, appearing like weather, pointed to the sign, then to Joy, then to James, then to the children, and the phone became a remorseful rectangle. At 10:45, during the small riot that is snack time, Joy found James refilling the water jug, the kind of task that never gets you credit and always needs doing. "Thank you for not bringing anything," she said, stopping a polite distance away. "I brought a person," he said. "Me. Also, 2 small people I'm legally responsible for." She almost smiled. Then she didn't because this mattered too much. "Say the thing you wanted to tell me before," she said. "In your kitchen." Before bedtime, gravity intervened. James swallowed. "That my wife died 20 months ago. That grief rearranged the house and my sense of math. That I kept trying to be good by being less visible, less demanding, less honest, and ended up hiding. That I didn't tell you my last name because I wanted a night where love didn't have a stock ticker. And that wanting that night doesn't excuse taking it." Joy breathed out slowly. The room throbbed with kid noise. Somewhere, a tambourine snuck into early parole. "Thank you," she said. "I am sorry for your loss." "Thank you," he said, not looking away. "Here's my thing," she said. "I grew up learning to take care of my own feelings, to manage other people's weather. I won't manage yours. If we do this, you have to meet me where I live, not just in houses with glitter, but in rooms with boundaries." "I will try," he said. "That's not evasive. It's a promise to fail in the right direction and get better." "Okay," she said, and the word felt like a tiny bridge laid between 2 cliffs. At 11, the donors appeared, 4 people in good coats and uneasy shoes. The director underlined the words community impact with a careful hand gesture. The donors practiced their nods. And then the tour rounded the corner into the program room and froze at the sight of 30 people with paint on their elbows. Cleaning up. Joy clapped twice. "Closing ritual," she called. "Find something that isn't where it belongs and help it find its family. Brushes to brush cups, lids to lids, paper to paper bin. We restore order together." The donors watched as the room executed a small ballet of shared responsibility. Mark carried the glitter tub like a crown. Charlie stacked chairs and supervised tape retrieval with the gravity of someone 40 years older. James wiped tables, head down, sleeves rolled. A woman in the donor group, 60, sharp eyes, knowing, said, almost to herself, "That's the thing." And Joy wanted to hug her even though they hadn't been introduced. After the woman came over, "I'm Ruth," she said. "May I?" She gestured to a drying rack full of heavy paper. Joy nodded. Ruth flipped through the damp galaxies and cardboard skylines and stopped at a drawing near the back. A house with a porch, for figures. The umbrella was faint but present. Title Room Enough. Ruth looked at Joy, then at James, then at the boys. She did not say anything about optics. She said, I used to run a daycare out of my kitchen. This is the same work. She put the drawing back carefully and walked away, leaving a small blessing behind her like a trail of salt. When the last parent had taken the last masterpiece and the room had returned to its factory settings, Joy turned to James. Lunch? He asked, tentative. Not a date, she said immediately. A debrief, he said. With sandwiches. Bella materialized. I approve this debrief. I will attend to ensure no tests are smuggled in under the guise of deli mustard. Mark cheered. Charlie pretended not to. They went to the same deli as before because rituals breed courage. At the tiny table by the fogged window, they ate turkey and avocado and argued about whether pickles qualify as vegetables. No, said Joy. Yes, said Charlie. Super yes, said Mark. Bella quizzed James without making it look like a quiz. Do you plan on doing press again? She asked. When it serves the work, James said. Not when it punishes the life. Do you plan on donating more without attribution? She asked, eyebrows arched. I plan on asking Joy what the center actually needs, he said. Then I'll do that in whatever way keeps the team comfortable. Bella sipped her coffee, hiding satisfaction behind steam. Okay, last question. Do you understand that this will never be a secret relationship in the way quiet people wish it could be? I do, he said. I also understand that being respectful and being silent are not the same thing. I won't disappear her, or us, but I won't parade us either. Bella leaned back. Acceptable, she said, then looked at Joy. He passes this round. Bread test, James asked. Graduated, Bella said. Welcome to the umbrella exam. After lunch, they walked back slowly, the kind of slow that says we are tired and good and not done. At the corner, a boy with a skateboard coasted past and shouted, Hey, that's the guy from the article. Joy felt her ribs tighten. James didn't flinch. He lifted a hand in a small, non-performative wave and kept walking. The boy shrugged and turned his attention back to gravity. Outside the library, they paused. The awning had a new leak. Rain stippled the concrete in a constellation that looked like coincidence learning to spell. Can I? James began and stopped because the next thing mattered. Can I bring the boys by tomorrow to return the book we borrowed? No photos, no press, just returning something that belongs here. Libraries closed on Sunday, Joy said, and watched disappointment move across his face, honest and quick. But I live 4 blocks away, she added, like a risk you take on purpose. We could walk if it's not a storm. There's a park. The slide is criminally fast. James found a smile he hadn't used in days. We like criminally fast. 2 to 4, she said. No gifts, no statements, just people. Just people, he repeated. They didn't hug. They didn't try to shrink this new, careful thing into a box labeled normal. They let it stand in the rain and prove it could. Sunday was the kind of Seattle day that can't be explained on a forecast. A curtain of fine rain at 1, a shaft of reckless sunlight at 2, both at once at 2:05. Joy wore her red raincoat and left her phone on the dresser. She put out 4 mugs and then laughed at herself and put one back. She cut apples. She told herself to breathe. 2:03, there was a polite knock. Mark burst in first, socks already wet. announcing that the slide had tried to arrest him. Charlie followed, holding a plastic bag with a paperback safely inside. James came last, hair damp, eyes clear, carrying nothing. Empty hands, honest posture. Joy took the book. "Checked in," she said gravely, and set it on the side table as if the table were a branch of the system. They walked to the park. The slide was, in fact, a hazard. Mark giggled so hard he hiccuped. Charlie timed himself and declared a personal best. James stood with Joy under a tree that was doing a mediocre job of being an umbrella and said, "I made a list." He took nothing out of his pockets. He just confessed. "Of what I owe you if I want to earn another chance." "You going to read it?" Joy asked, doubtful and interested in equal parts. "No," he said. "I'm going to keep it. And do it." She nodded once, and the nod felt like permission to continue trying rather than a pardon. He understood the difference. On the way back, Mark did a small dance with a pigeon. Charlie gave a weather report to anyone who would listen. A woman pushing a stroller looked at James, looked at Joy, and smiled a private smile, the kind you offer strangers when you hope their story ends well. At Joy's building, they paused again. The umbrella exam, perhaps. James held his hands exactly where they were, empty, visible. "Thank you," he said, "for today. For not making me prove anything I can only live." "Thank the slide," she said. "It did most of the work." The boys argued amicably about whose turn it was to press the elevator button. Joy decided not to invite them up, and she watched disappointment again. Small, present. Move across all three faces. Boundaries, she reminded herself, are also a kind of love. "Next time," she said, "if there is one." "There can be," James said, and the hope in his voice didn't try to sell itself. They left with careful goodbyes and the kind of wave you make when you know there is a future you aren't rushing. Joy went upstairs and put the paperback on her counter and the apples in the fridge and her hand flat on the table until her heartbeat slowed. She unrolled the drawing again. Room enough. The umbrella was lighter on this one, the pencil lines gentle, as if the artist had decided shelter was now an inside job. Her phone buzzed. A number she didn't know. A text. "Hi Joy, it's Sophie Lane. We haven't met, but I wanted to tell you he turned down interviews he could have used." He told a reporter no like a person who finally learned that no is a full sentence. "I don't know what that's worth to you. Just, sometimes people try to be better. And sometimes they are." Joy stared at the message and felt the wobble move through her in a way that didn't scare her. She typed back, "Thank you. That is worth something." She added, after a breath, "I hope your family emergency is okay. Sophie, it is now. And I'm adopting a very old dog. His name is Biscuit. The boys should meet him someday." Joy smiled at her counter. She sent a photo of the drawing, cropped at the porch, caption "Work in progress," then deleted the photo from the thread because privacy is a practice. She texted Bella, "We walked. He brought nothing. He said real things. Bella, proud of your boundaries. Proud of his attempt. Proud of the slide for its contribution. Joy, room enough. Bella, room enough." On Monday, the Seattle Tribune ran a new story, not a headline, a small piece in the city section about the community center's Saturday program expanding because of increased volunteer support. No photo, no CEO mention, just a quote from the director about children and shared responsibility and a donor named Ruth who remembered daycare kitchens. Joy clipped it, not because she wanted to keep a record of press, but because it felt like a record of something truer, a room full of people being useful. James read the same piece at his desk at Denton Global Group, the view of South Lake Union doing its best impression of a painting. He printed the article and put it inside the front cover of a notebook labeled Home, because categories are how he fools himself into bravery. He stared at his calendar and moved 2 meetings and canceled one. He wrote Tuesday 5:30, paint in the margin of his brain, and sent Hannah a message. I'll be unreachable for that hour. If anyone asks, say I'm in a room where applause does not help. Hannah, copy. Also, someone donated tambourines. Anonymous. Block the donor, he wrote. Hannah, too late. The donor is Mark. James laughed, out loud, alone in his office, which startled him and soothed him at the same time. He took out his list. He read the line about show up with empty hands and honest words and underlined empty and honest until the ink almost bled through. He didn't call Joy. He didn't send flowers. He learned to let a good day breathe without trying to pin it to a wall. That night, after the boys were asleep and the dishwasher began its reliable argument with the plates, James opened their art drawer and took out a sheet of paper. He drew a house that looked like his because he didn't know how to draw any other. He penciled a porch and 2 windows and a door that needed paint. He drew 3 figures, their heights correct because he is a man who measures. He left a space and wrote room enough again, this time smaller, this time on the step, this time as a sign you only see when you're close. He folded it, slid it under a magnet on the fridge shaped like a pear, and stood in the kitchen for a long time with his hands in his pockets and his heart somewhere it had not been for months. Not safe, but brave. Across town, Joy washed paint from her forearms and felt the same. Not safe. Brave. 2 different words. Same direction. She set an alarm. She set a boundary. She set, gently, the expectation that next time was a promise made to effort, not outcome. And because she had learned that sometimes a person needs to grant themselves what they keep waiting to be given, she whispered to the dark, no tests, just showing up. The dark, for once, agreed. Seattle's rain softened into something almost kind the night James decided he couldn't wait any longer. Not a grand gesture. Not a public apology. Just his own 2 hands, empty, carrying nothing but the will to knock. Joy's apartment was on the 2nd floor of a brick building that smelled faintly of coffee grounds and laundry detergent. He'd memorized the path here without admitting it. His sons had begged to come, but he'd told them this was something he needed to do first. Alone. She opened the door wearing the sweater she always wore on messy program Saturdays, sleeves smudged with paint. Her eyes widened, wary but not closed. James, she said, and the name, his real name, felt like a gift and a test at once. Hi, he said. He kept his voice steady, soft. I didn't bring flowers, or cameras, or excuses, just me. A beat, the sound of a neighbor's TV through the wall. A child upstairs thumping across the floor. Rain tapping glass. Joy stepped back enough to let him in. The living room was small. A sagging couch, a stack of children's books she used for programs, a plant that had decided to live despite neglect. James sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped like a man in church. Joy remained standing, arms folded loosely. I need to say this, he began. I lied by omission. I thought hiding my last name would protect something good, but all it did was break your trust. You deserved the truth from the start. And if you never forgive me, I'll understand. She tilted her head, studying him. Then why come? Because I don't want forgiveness more than I want honesty, he said. Because my boys drew you into their family without asking my permission, and they were right. Because you make our lives lighter, and I'd be a fool not to fight for that with the truth instead of half-truths. Silence again. Then, a knock. Small, rapid. Joy frowned, opened the door. Charlie and Mark. Soaked, smiling, Hannah behind them with an umbrella too small for three. They insisted, Hannah said. I'm only the driver. Joy stared, torn between laughter and exasperation. You walked here in this rain? Mission critical, Charlie announced. He held up a rolled paper, tape barely holding. We made an update. Joy knelt. Mark unrolled it dramatically. Another house, drawn in thicker lines this time. On the porch, James, Charlie, Mark. And now Joy centered, not off to the side. Umbrella gone. Above them, a banner of block letters. NO tests. Just family. Joy's throat closed. She pressed a hand to her mouth. James knelt too, rain dripping from his hair, and didn't speak. He let the boy's drawing say what he couldn't. Finally, Joy whispered, You can't promise me easy. No, James said, but I can promise you real. The boys crowded her, damp and insistent. Mark whispered, Stay. As if that were enough to rewrite law. Joy looked at James. He wasn't dazzling or rehearsed. He was just a man, rain-soaked, flawed, asking. She exhaled. Okay, she said. Relief crossed his face, not triumphant, just human. He reached for her hand. She let him. Later that week, they walked together through Pike Place Market. No disguises, no running. James bought flowers from a vendor who didn't blink at his name. Joy bought bread, Bella trailing like a hawk and finally admitting she approved. Hannah joined them halfway, laughing when Mark tried to barter comic books for apples. The city still whispered, but softer now, like background static. Headlines moved on. What remained was ordinary. Shared meals, library programs, a kitchen where 4 mugs finally belonged. On a quiet evening, Joy found James sitting on the couch with Charlie asleep against his shoulder and Mark snoring in a blanket fort. He looked up, met her gaze, and whispered, I wasn't searching for the perfect woman. I was searching for the right one. Joy curled beside him, touched her forehead to his, and whispered back, then stopped searching. They didn't need applause, or statements, or guarantees. They had a house drawn in pencil, rain outside, warmth inside. Not a test, not a performance, just love brave enough to stay.